What's going on, ladies and gentlemen? Welcome back to The Fringe. If you thought a lot of people were illegally coming into Canada and claiming asylum, and of course, we know about it, we've heard about it. Even Pierre says it's time to get those people out of here. It's time to get temporary foreign workers out of here. The crime that comes with it, the filled streets of tent cities. We've seen it all. Roxham Road, you name it. If you thought people were fleeing to Canada, turns out there's a very large number of people now fleeing Canada to the United States illegally. Now, before you start thinking, hey, it's people who just are fed up with Canada, they're fed up with Trudeau, they're fleeing and trying to seek asylum in the United States. No, we're going to get into that in this video. Before we do, I just want to encourage everybody watching the video, if you're enjoying the content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, join our large Fringe majority here on the channel, leave a thumbs up and a comment on the way out. Helps us reach new audiences and costs absolutely nothing. With that, let's get into what we have to talk about today. I was shown this video. Trump blocks 16,000 migrants from entering New York City. And of course, this was posted 13 hours prior to filming of this video. Of course, in the thumbnail, what you can see down here are mostly Indian people. And we're not talking indigenous. We're talking people from India that are crossing into the United States. Now, this is a generated thumbnail because, of course, you don't have a bus sitting in the middle of a field. But we're going to get into something because I did a little bit of work. I can't show the video because, again, it's copyright. We don't want to infringe on anybody's copyrights. But this article from CBC, of all places, is hilarious because as I dug into it, this article was released back in September of last year. So this was just before the U.S. election. Joe Biden was still in charge in the United States. This New York farmer is overwhelmed by illegal crossings from Canada caught on camera. The RCMP say they've stepped up border patrols after arrest of suspected terrorists. Again, we all know how that turned out, how the Border Patrol essentially has done nothing to help Canadians. We wouldn't be in this possible trade war issue had they have done their jobs in the first place. It says here, the outline of a liquor bottle is carved into boards just beneath the tip of the roof on one side of Chris Oliver's barn, which sits a few feet away from the Canadian border, which runs along the northern edge of his farm near Fort Covington, New York. The outline echoes another age along those borderlands when runners moved contraband liquor from Canada south across the stretch of land between Quebec and New York State during Prohibition. Now a different type of traffic is moving through Oliver's farm. It's people. Over the past several months, a growing tide of men, women, and sometimes children have used Oliver's farm as a transit point to clandestine foot journeys from Canada into the United States. Now, of course, they're headed for New York City because New York City is still one of the safe haven cities where their woke governor allows people to come in and essentially seek asylum. Now, usually those people, and again, there's been video footage showing that up until around the same time this article was written last year, their governor, it was either their governor or their senator who was putting them on buses and shipping them back to Roxham Road because there's nowhere for these people to go. The shelters are full. They're using former luxurious hotels to put these people up. Tent cities, crime. It's all over. Everybody's seen the reports. It says here that they've all passed in front of this farmer's home where he lives with his wife and 3 children, and all that's captured on his trail cameras. In the weeks leading up to the past Labor Day weekend, Oliver's cameras recorded 48 people crossing near his doorstep. And that's just one camera in one area, so it's hard to say how many actually did walk by, said Oliver, who's 32 years of age. Oliver's farm sits just east of Dundee, Quebec, border crossing around 110 kilometers southwest of Montreal. It's part of an area that runs roughly 100 kilometers from Cornwall, Ontario, and east to Champlain, New York. And it sees some of the highest rates of U.S.-bound illegal crossings anywhere along the Canadian-U.S. border, according to the court records of the U.S. Customs Border Protection data. So you can see the graph down here, and we'll get into that graph. But here, there's only 26 to 46 reported crossings in November of 2020, and look how it spiked just in the last 4 years. When you look at what's happened in Canada with our borders in the last 4 years, with this whole influx of migrants and asylum seekers. It's a telling tale of what we're looking at both in Canada and the US in terms of illegals. And it's not just people coming south into the United States from Mexico. It's now people leaving Canada, hoping for greener pastures in the United States. U.S. Border Patrol intercepted just over 8,000 people, mostly from India, crossing between June and August through an area called Swanton Sector, which includes Oliver's Farm. That was nearly quadruple the number over the same period last year. So in just 1 year, from 2023 to 2024, it quadrupled, which you can see here. Here's January of 2024, down 926. 3,600 in June of 2024. Yes, it dips, but it's still down to 2,400 people crossing that border. Even March of 2022, April, you only had about 150, 175 people. Canada and U.S. law enforcement say human smuggling organizations operate throughout this stretch of the rivers, brush, and farmlands. The patterns of movement caught by Oliver's trail camera suggest his farm may currently be one of the chosen routes. In some videos, the male individual appears to be talking or using a cell phone, leading groups which primarily move through the area in the late evenings or early morning hours like clockwork, he says. Usually you get one group, maybe one or two people at about 8:30 at night. You'll see another bigger group of usually 4 to 5 people, and those ones usually come through between midnight and 5:30 in the morning, he said, kind of like trash pandas. Oliver installed the first camera on his house a year ago after the dogs woke his wife up at about 2 a.m., one time while he was away at work, and she saw 3 men standing by their car in the driveway. This is the problem when you've got this happening. Everybody's at risk. It's a safety concern. Keep in mind, again, while people say, oh, Derek, you're being racist. No, this is a security threat. Not only to people's sovereignty in their countries, not only to their jobs, not only to their way of life, but you don't know who these people are. There's a reason they're illegally crossing the borders. They can't do it legitimately. Whether they were trying to get into the car or not, I don't know, he said. Oliver's grandfather, David Holden, 80 years of age, grew up on these farmlands and heard the Prohibition-era stories. His family tree's roots extend across both sides of the border. He says he's never seen so many crossings through the area. This is way out of the ordinary, he said. It keeps everyone on edge. Rightfully so. One video stands out from Oliver. It's 1:30 in the morning on September 5th. A group of 3 men and 2 women walk out of the night and across the frame. One of the men leads the group holding a cell phone and with his free hand gripping the hand of another man as if guiding him as they walk in the dark. This happened less than 12 hours after the RCMP apprehended a Pakistani national suspected of planning an attack in the United States. And we all heard about that. Canadian-U.S. court records allege Mohammed Shazeb Khan, 20, was using human smugglers to cross in the U.S. through the area between Quebec and New York State. So when people say that Donald Trump's being a bully when he's talking about fix your borders, this is part of the reason. If another 9/11 style event happened as a result of somebody coming over the Canadian border, can you imagine? We would be talking about a lot more than a trade war at that point. Heads would roll while our woke prime minister stands there going, diversity. Give me a break. The RCMP arrested Khan in Ormstown, Quebec, about 40 kilometers northeast of Oliver's Farm. There are several road routes to the U.S. border from Ormstown, the shortest being about 18 kilometers from the line. A few hours after that, I had people on my camera. The guy could have very well been with that group, he says. The RCMP says it stepped up patrols along the border after his arrest. Matthew Eamer, a recently retired detective with the Ontario Provincial Police, was a lead investigator in the interrogated border enforcement team out of Cornwall, Ontario. The team includes the RCMP, Canada Border Services Agency, and other bodies. He was part of the team that disrupted a human smuggling organization linked to the deaths of 4 Indian and 4 Romanian family members who drowned in the St. Lawrence River during a failed human smuggling attempt last March. Emer says investigators always worried about a radicalized individual like Khan finding a way across the border. But it's not just a radicalized person. Like, what was it we were talking about here? 2,400 people? I want to go back to this graph. 3,000 and then 2,400 dipping. Since Trump took office, this has gone up, by the way. As this video claims, 16,000 migrants were being blocked entering New York City. And you're talking about, well, it's only an issue because this one person got over. This is the same issue that we find, as they were saying when it comes to the illegal substances coming into our country that Donald Trump has, that, oh, well, it was just a small amount. They're not acknowledging the problem here, that it exists at all. It shouldn't exist to this extent. Emer says investigators, oh, sorry, we got to that. Some of them are economic migrants and that they're just looking for a better life in another country, he said, but there's some people with a malicious intent. Again, the proof is in the pudding. Look at the crime rates in Toronto. Look at the spiked car thefts, the cars being entered into shipping containers, the shipping containers, of course, very loosely being checked, vehicles being sent all over the world, like chop shops. You've got mass crime in New York City right now. People hanging out in parks, hotels, tents, claiming asylum. Give me a break. He said Ottawa could give law enforcement more tools to counter human smuggling organizations, which he says are often transnational, and boldly advertise their services on social media platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Telegram. He says Canada's current laws targeting this type of human smuggling focus on the conspiracy part of the action, that there is a clear intent on physically getting someone across the border. He says the federal government could amend the criminal code or the Immigration and Refugee Act to make all aspects of a border run a criminal offense, whether driving, harboring, aiding crossings in any way similar to U.S. laws. This is where, again, Donald Trump has said, clean up your act. Now you've got Canadians crossing the border into the United States. Well, I shouldn't say Canadians. You've got people in Canada crossing the border illegally into the United States at alarming numbers. This poses the question, should we really be talking about going to a trade war with Donald Trump right now, or should we be talking about fixing our border? I think this paints a broader picture as to why our American brothers are pissed at Canadians and why we perhaps should be pushing our elected politicians to stop talking about a trade war and start focusing on the real problem, and that's deporting these people out of the country, send them back to, as Donald Trump says, their third world shitholes, and tell them that they're not wanted here, they're not wanted in America, it's time to go home. Clean up the border, lock it down, change the acts. If you really care about the crime in this country, if you really care about fixing things so it's safer for people, so that cars aren't being put on shipping containers, I've heard incoming campaigning leaders saying, well, we're going to put scanners at the ports, we're going to beef up CBSA, we're going to make sure containers are scanned and whatnot. How about just get rid of the troublemakers, and that alleviates the majority of the problem? Yes, we still have to check containers. Yes, we have to do a better job. But I don't hear anybody talking about changing those laws so that people go to jail or are deported immediately and sent back, extradited to the countries they came from, to have their law enforcement deal with them accordingly. Let me know what you guys think down below. Should we be doing something more about this, or do you think we should be getting into a trade war? If it's your first time here, I hope this video has earned your subscription. Make sure as you're hitting that button, you click the bell for notifications. Join me live here on the channel every Wednesday and Friday night for Unhinged Fringe on Wednesdays. Friday Night Fringe on Fridays, where I'm joined by the very beautiful Mrs. Fringe. As on both shows, we go over everything currently happening in politics. We hear what you guys have to say outside of making these videos, and both the wife and I look forward to hearing what you have to say this Friday night. Both shows starting at 6 p.m. Pacific, 8 p.m. Central here on the channel. With that said, ladies and gentlemen, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you have a great rest of your day. I'll catch you on the next one.